Okay, thank you. I call the meeting of the Kentucky Retirement System, our quarterly board meeting, to order. And Michael, will you read the legal public statement?
Yes, ma'am. This is a regular meeting of the Kentucky Retirement System's Board of Trustees. This meeting is being broadcast via video teleconference pursuant to Kentucky Revised Statute Section 61.826 and may be viewed by the public at the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority offices located at 1260 Louisville Road in Frankfort, Kentucky. It is also being broadcast to the public via Facebook. If you are speaking and not appearing by video, please identify yourself before talking. In the event the video or audio broadcast is interrupted, we will attempt to reestablish a connection. If a connection cannot be reestablished within 30 minutes, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled to another date. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. And Sherry, if you would, is there any public comment?
No, ma'am, no public comment.
Thank you. And would you do the roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Hampton?
Here.
Mr. Atkins? Ms. Bova?
Here.
Ms. Eves?
Here.
Mr. Lane?
Here.
Dr. Miller? Thought she was here. Mr. Piercy?
Here.
And Ms. Thompson?
Here.
And Dr. Miller? Are you with us?
Here, sorry, I couldn't get mine.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sherry, and thank you everyone for being here. We have an interesting meeting today, and then afterwards we'll have a closed session. So with that, we have minutes of September 12th to review and approve. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Okay, the motion is adopted.
I'm sorry,
and-
Ms. Hampton, who made the motion? I didn't catch that.
We didn't have one, but I will make the motion.
Oh,
Thank you,
okay.
Mary. And a second? And then we'll revote.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so again, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? None. Okay, the motion then is adopted. Thank you, Sherry, for getting me to slow down.
Oh, no problem.
Okay, the next on the agenda is Danny White and Janie Shaw, who will review the draft 2024 actuarial report, and afterwards we'll have a motion to accept it. So Danny, are you first or Janie?
Absolutely, I'm here. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully everybody's fully caffeinated, ready to go. We have here to present the results of the June 30, 2024 valuation. For this one, you can kind of sit back and kind of absorb it, as even though you accept the val and that we're in the middle of a biennial budget cycle. So these vals are more for informational purposes only. These will be presented to the PPOB and all be forwarded, but the General Assembly won't be making any budget actions on these valuations themselves because you are in the middle of the budget cycle. Rather, this is more informational, and it provides you how the progress of the funding of the plan is tracked from last year to this year, which I think is overall you should take away as favorable as Janie and Christy go through. Certainly, if you have any questions along the way, raise your hand, speak up, and we'll address them as they come up. So with that, I'll turn over to Janie.
We're going to go ahead and move on to the next slide here. Like Danny said, we're going to go over a few highlights, kind of look at what changed this year versus last year. And then we're going to do a forward-looking look of saying, where's the retirement system going today? Is it meeting the board's current funding goals? So we'll start. A lot of you might remember this is very similar to last year's valuation. We had significant increases in our active membership as well as our membership payroll this year. When we look at changes in our membership payroll, we're literally looking at two main drivers behind behind that increase. So the first, of course, is if your active membership goes up, you have more active members, you have more payroll on the books. Overall, your total membership payroll is going to go up. We did see this year, we saw active membership go up across all funds. And this is a really good, financial indicator for the Commonwealth, for the employers of the system, and ultimately a good financial indicator for the retirement system as well. The second driver, of course, we have payroll increases for your current active members. So we did see significant pay increases for your current active members as well in all three funds. And keep in mind, when we see pay increases for your active members, what we're doing is we're essentially more pay increases now means higher projected retirement benefits in the future for these members, which does result in a change in your liability. But ultimately for your K hazardous fund, that resulted in a 23% increase in your membership payroll, which is quite significant, 11% for state police. We did also see an increase for K non-haz as well. And we will show that later on in the presentation. But one thing to keep in mind is this fund is going to act a little bit different as far as the employer contributions, just because only your normal cost rate is tied to payroll. Moving on to the next slide here. The other big headline of this year's valuation is the legislation that passed in 2024. So we had House Bill 1 and House Bill 6 that provided additional appropriations for the K non-hazardous retirement fund, as well as state police. So again, in this year's budget, we saw in legislative session, we saw additional appropriations coming into these funds, which is really great to see. We've gotten a lot of additional appropriations for these funds in the past few years, and this has really been great for the retirement systems. One thing to keep in mind, though, when we do recognize these contributions into our fund, it's not changing the end goal. It's not changing what year we're getting that 100% funded, but essentially what it's doing is it's pre-funding our contributions, which means fewer contributions are going to be needed in the future. So again, for K non-haz, we're seeing a total of $300 million for 2 years. And then for state police, it's $25 million. So again, really great to see these appropriations coming in. So we'll move on to the next slide here. Keep in mind when we do an actual evaluation, there's really two sides to our equation, right? We have our assets and we have our liability. Both of those are determined as of our valuation date, as of June 30, 2024. So we'll start with our assets here for just a second. On our market value, we saw between 9%, 11% returns on our market value. That's going to vary by, which fund we're looking at. You can compare that to our assumed rate of return. Keep in mind, we have a few now. So we have 5.25% for the K non-haz and state police retirement funds, 6.25% for the K hazardous pension fund, and then 6.5% for all of the insurance funds for all of the systems. So, quite a bit higher than our assumed return. Essentially what this means is that we had 336 million more in assets than we were expecting. But keep in mind, when we do our actual evaluation, we are smoothing those investment returns in over a 5-year period. So in this year's valuation, we're recognizing 89 million in asset gains, and that goes directly to reducing that unfunded liability. So here on our
Jenny,
next slide, we're going to look at the other side of our equation. We have our liability side.
Hold on, Jenny, maybe a question.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Maybe I should put my thing. I had a question on the assumed rate of return. I think the funded is now up to around 25%. Is that correct? And on the KRS.
For the K non-haz, yes.
Yeah. So with that, where do you think that we would be able to increase our risk, or where, I know CERS did that, and we decided not to yet, but now that we're at 25%, at some point we would want to increase the risk and increase that assumed rate of return, but I don't know how to make that decision of what we should consider other than the funded rate. Did I say that
Some of
correctly?
that, I think you're a few years off. At least, another, through this cycle, I think, the time to investigate is maybe 3 or 4 years from now when we're scheduled to have the next review of the assumed rate of return. The other part is to pull in the CIO with, as part of this discussion, to look at the cash flows. Because when you do, there's 2 items here. One of them is you you can take more risk and in the investment portfolio. The second question is if you take that more risk, do you want to recognize that in the assumed rate of return, a higher assumed rate of return? You can take the risk, but when you all of a sudden recognize it in the assumed rate of return, you're kind of taking an advanced notion you're going to get those higher returns, whether or not they actually achieve.
Okay.
But it's certainly a worthwhile question. It's been discussed in the past with Mr. Eager, and it's something that's going to come up again. So I'm glad you spoke to this.
Yeah, I just think it's something that we should keep in mind for the future, that at some point in time, I don't know if it's we're 50% funded or 75%, what are the timeframes to do it, that we have enough in them to absorb the risk.
There were in historical conversations it was around 50%, but those none of those people are in on this call today. So we've got a new set of associates to discuss that with.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Jane.
I think on that particular topic, that conversation is probably more applicable to SPRS since they are over 50% now. And then the question is, how much, if any, more risk do you take? And honestly, just from my point of view, I think there should always be a relationship between the risk and the assumed rate. Otherwise, you've just got a disconnect there. If you take more risk, but then you don't assume more return, those two things don't seem to go together to me.
Yeah.
But
I think that's a
that-
good point, Keith.
I can't find my raise my hand on the screen for some reason. So I've got my hand up. It was really a two-part discussion though, back when we back in the day. One was the risk and the effective market on our driving us to pay as we go, because we were actually right at the level of paying cash out for the benefits, and or pay almost pay as you go, except the state didn't have to pay any of that. So that was one of the real barriers for increasing the so-called risk and of the portfolio. We worked right through that very nicely and are certainly in a very positive cash flow position, thanks to our nice friends in the legislature and the governor and good returns. But so it was a two-part decision to keep our risks fairly low.
Risk assumptions, yes. Okay, anybody else want to comment on this or anything else? We're back to Janie. Okay, Janie, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll talk about the liability since we talked about the assets. So we had a $434 million loss across all of our retirement funds. Essentially what that means is our liability was $434 million higher than we were expecting. This is primarily because of those salary increases we talked about, your active members getting those higher salaries with higher projected benefits into the future. On the insurance fund side of things, we had a $160 million loss, and that's mainly due to the 2025 medical premiums that we saw. So on one side, we had your Medicare premiums. Those were significantly higher than we were expecting for 2025. But on the other side, your non-Medicare premiums, those actually stayed level for 2025. Keep in mind, we do assume those are going to go up by about 6.8%. So when they didn't, that's going to be a gain to the system that's going to offset those Medicare premiums. So kind of sitting on that right now, those non-Medicare premiums are going to have a bigger impact on your hazardous fund and your state police fund. The reason being, you have more retirees under age 65 in those funds. That's just because of the retirement eligibility conditions. So when we look at that loss, a large chunk of that is going to be from the non-hazardous fund, and the other two are going to offset each other a little bit. So let's dig into that salary experience that we saw a little bit more. So right here, we see on this chart, these are your members who are active as of June 30, 2023. And then of course, your members who are active as of June 30, 2024. We looked at their actual pay and how that pay actually increased from 2023 to 2024. So essentially what this is showing us is that for your non-hazardous fund, on average, your active members got about a 15% pay increase in the prior year, hazardous about 18%. Another thing this chart shows us is if you look, this is split up by the different service bands of your employees. So what this shows us is we did see those increases really across all your service bands. So this was really more of an across the board kind of increase that affected a large portion of your active population. Another, I think, notable part of this slide is if you look at how many members are in that band, from that 1 to 5 service band, so that top row right there, you can see there's a lot of new members, and that really is indicative of the new members that we've seen come into the plan in these last few years, which is good to see.
Yeah, a couple other
Um,
comments. Thank you, Janie. I didn't mean to interrupt, but for completeness, state police, we just didn't quite have enough room to put on the slide here, but I believe their average payroll increases or salary increases was about 11%. They had, if you look at the year prior, they had quite an adjustment, catch up in salaries that year. The other one is as you look at it at this, what we see for KRS, this is also what we saw in similar experience for CRS. And then also, if you expand this to a larger group, this is what we're actually seeing across the country these last 24 months in terms of, compensation increases that public employees, both in the has, non-has, are receiving considerable catch-up, what I call catch-up payroll increases to, part of it is for inflation, part of it's for marketability, just to remain competitive with the private sector. So when we see this is not unique to KRS only. It's across the country. And kind of, if there's a question for us, it's that we don't know, but we're very much interested is how much longer is this going to continue? Will it be another 12 months or, at some point it subsides, goes back to normal. It's not appropriate to see this and extrapolate it to happen, in the future.
So, if we move forward, so here's just kind of a standard comment we always make on the non-hazardous fund. I think this is, again, applicable when we're talking about risk to the fund and part of that discussion. But given the current funded status of the K non-hazardous fund, we do like to point out the current cash flow. So the fund is cash flow positive right now. You can see we had about $1 billion of benefit payments in 2024 and received about $1.4 million in employer member contributions. This just being said that it is important that we maintain the contribution effort for this fund and that we keep getting those actually determined contributions. So ultimately, this brings us to what are those employer contributions? How did all of this impact those employer contributions? And we'll look at it here on this slide here. So we'll start with the non-hazardous fund here. So keep in mind your non-hazardous fund is funded a little bit differently than your other funds. So just your normal cost rate is as a percentage of payroll. That amortization cost, that's the cost to pay off your unfunded liability. That's done as a dollar amount and then is split amongst all of your employers. So looking at your normal cost here, it did go down to 7.99%. We expect this to go down each year. Keep in mind your normal cost is essentially the cost of the benefits for your active memberships, the cost of those benefits accruing each year. So as your tier 1 and your tier 2 members retire and leave the system, they're going to be replaced by tier 3 members. Those tier 3 members have a lower cost of benefit. So that blended normal cost rate is expected to go down for the foreseeable future. So again, looking at your amortization cost here, we are going to break this down a little bit further in the presentation, but it did go up by $9 million this year. You can see the vast majority of that is due to your insurance fund, and that's because of those Medicare premiums. Looking at the K hazardous and state police, we do collect the entire contribution on a percentage of payroll. So that's both your normal costs and your amortization costs. And you can see your contribution rates did go down since the prior year for both of these funds. And the vast majority of that is because of that higher membership payroll that we saw. So even though we did see some losses in this year's valuation, all of that is being spread across more payroll. So as a percentage of payroll, those contributions are going to come down. But what's important to note is if we look on the next slide here, If you look at your K hazardous fund, yes, the contribution rate went down, but the total contribution dollars that we need actually went up by $4 million here. And that's because we are paying for those losses that we saw, even though it's being spread out across more payroll. On state police, we did actually have a decrease, and that's because that additional appropriations that we're expecting to see, that's why that one is a decrease versus the K hazardous. That's the additional $25 million that we're getting for that fund, reducing future contributions. K non-hazardous, you can see the total employer contribution going up from 22 million. Keep in mind, 9 million of that is that amortization cost. The rest is because we have more payroll, there's more members to pay that normal cost on. And Danny did mention this at the beginning of the presentation, but I just also want to say, again, these employer contributions are really just for informational purposes right now. The budget is already set based on last year's valuation. This is just kind of give you an idea of where we're at kind of mid-year in that cycle. And then when we come back next year with next year's valuation, that's where we're going to be setting the new budget. So if we move to the next slide, this is just breaking down that amortization cost for K non-hazardous a little bit more, what really is behind that increase. So you can see we got those $300 million appropriations that we're recognizing. That's a reduction of 25 million. That positive investment experience, we saw a reduction 6 million. And then that demographic experience, an increase of 40 million. And again, that's those pay increases that your active members got, and also those 2025 Medicare premiums. Another note I want to make here, we're only recognizing 1 year of the $300 million appropriations in this year's calculation. When we come and do the valuation next year, we're expecting an additional 25 million reduction due to the fiscal year 2026 appropriations. So just keep that in mind when we come back and do the budget next year. And then the final piece of the puzzle, this is our unfunded actual accrued liability. So this is the difference between where your assets and your liability are today. If we look across our pension funds, you can see that unfunded liability going down across all of your funds. This is exactly what we want to see. So even though we had some losses on the liability side, that was offset by some asset gains, but also it's just the contributions that are going into these funds are systematically paying off that unfunded liability. So even though we had those losses, we're still seeing that unfunded liability come down. And again, that's exactly what we want to see. On your insurance fund, we did have a slight increase in that unfunded liability on the K non-hazardous fund. Again, that's just because of those Medicare premiums had a bigger impact there on your non-hazardous fund. And for K hazardous and state police, both of those insurance funds are currently in what we call a funding surplus. Essentially, your assets are greater than your liability. And so those stayed pretty level at where they were at from the prior year. I'm going to pause right there and see if there's any additional questions from the board about these results before I turn it over to Christy to kind of do a deeper dive into what we saw in our demographics this year. I'll turn it over to Christy.
Janie. So Janie has already really discussed where we're at today and what we saw year over year on the increases in our active membership counts. We wanted to give you a broader perspective as well as where we've been on those membership counts looking forward. So on these two graphs, we can see that over the last 2 years, we've seen growth in all of the funds. However, if we look into the past, we can look really at the K non-hazardous, where we can see a pretty stark difference there, where there was a strong trend downward in your membership growth. And with that, we're still seeing over a 2% average decrease over the last 10 years. Due to this, we're really not ready to say that there is a strong trend in that upward increase quite yet. So later on, when Janie goes over some of those forward-looking projections, we are still looking at an assumption of a 2% population decrease in the future for the plans. And this graph is really why, because we can see that we still haven't quite started an upward trend that has been continuous moving forward. However, the last 2 years of this increase in active membership is a really positive signal for both of these plans.
Absolutely.
For all of the reasons mentioned by Janie before as well. A lot of that coming back to that active membership payroll, especially on the hazardous and the state police sides, where your contributions are coming from that membership payroll. And as we increase our membership counts, we're going to see an increase in membership payroll along with that.
I'm going to interrupt real quick, just make a note. I'm kind of looking at this chart. I think the board's probably very familiar with that sharp decrease in that membership count on the K non-hazardous fund, and then the increase going up. I think there's a lot of drivers behind this, but this is what we wanted to see after the passing of House Bill 8. We wanted to see this membership start going up, the payroll start going up, kind of getting out of what people used to call that death spiral. So this is exactly what we want to see and what we're hoping to see after the passing of House Bill 8. Obviously, I think that's been helped by a lot of, the financial condition of the Commonwealth and also inflation. But again, this is a really positive signal. And I'll also note there's a lot of variability in that K hazardous fund. Some of that has been membership moving from non-haz to hazardous, but also just a smaller fund. So that's why you're going to see more variability there.
So that'll bring us to our next slide, which is going to be a very similar type of graphs, but now we're actually looking at that membership payroll. So the membership payroll is made up of both that new membership coming in and adding to the payroll. Additionally, we were seeing the increases to your current continuing active member payroll. Again, we've seen some very large increases, particularly on the KRS side, both non-hazardous and hazardous, over the last 2 years. Similar to that last graph, we can see on the non-hazardous side that we were in a pretty continuous downward trend. And now we're looking at a pretty sharp uptick. But we do want to consider what Danny said at the top, that there are many things going into this, and a lot of it is that catch-up payroll growth, and we're not quite ready to call it a trend, but we're going to continue monitoring this moving forward to see how much longer these increases in payroll will continue. On the K hazardous side, similar to the membership growth, we can really see that there's just a little bit more variability in that line there. Similarly, on the state police side, we mentioned last year was really a big catch-up year for the state police, and then the growth this year was a little bit less, but still quite significant compared to past years when we're looking at this graph. And then on to our next slide. This is really more informational. It's your retiree membership count across each of the funds. This is something we expect to increase each year. That is just the nature of a retirement fund, is that we expect people to retire and start collecting their benefits. So we're going to see increases in the counts on your retiree side going up each year. Similarly, on the next slide, we just have the benefit amounts that are being paid out. As Janie mentioned earlier, just coming back to, we do expect to see this to grow, but right now we're seeing a really positive trend on the K non-hazardous side, where you are in a cash flow positive situation, where those pension benefit distributions aren't, they are lower than the contributions coming in. So that's a really positive note with that. On our next slide, I guess I'll pause real quick if there are any membership questions that you all have. It's really more informational, just giving you an idea of where you've been, where you're going, and all around they've been really positive signals.
The only thing I could say is maybe the ghost of Dave coming in, that he would mention that there's almost $5 billion a year going into the Kentucky economy from the KRS.
Yes,
From the pensions that are paid.
that is very true. But with that,
We got another question.
Christy, Mary Eves, one of the things that features we have is this pension spiking penalty, essentially. If your salary increases more than 10% in 1 year, that's counted in your credited service for benefit calculation purposes. And given the explosion or the increase in the salaries along the way, and I know not everybody will be affected by pension spiking because they're not in their final 5 years or in their calculation years. But my question is this: do you take that into account, the pension spiking rules, in your assumptions, or just ignore that?
Our valuation process doesn't go to that level of refinement.
Thank you.
If it does occur, to the extent somebody's actually limited, it would flow through and we would recognize it the subsequent year when we know what the actual benefit is when they retire.
Understood. Thank you.
Mhm. Okay.
I don't think I see any other questions. So on this side, there's a bit more of a breakdown here, but a lot of this is the information that you've already seen that Janie has gone over. Particularly on the K non-hazardous side, you do kind of see this breakdown in the actuarial determined contribution rate since we already have it broken out by the normal cost and then that additional amortization cost. So really the same story here. We are seeing that decrease in the total normal cost rate that's expected over time, especially as more tier 3 members come into the plan and they are accruing that benefit at a lower rate. On the other side, we are also seeing the increase in your funded ratio, as we mentioned before. So that did go up from about 22% to about 25%, which is a really great signal for the plan. And that really is attributable to all of the extra contribution efforts coming into the plan. However, this is still 25%. So as it was emphasized earlier, those efforts really need to continue. And we really like to see, especially those additional appropriations coming in, and the current contribution schedule should continue to help that to go up in the future as well. On the insurance side, we can see that the funded ratio remained relatively stable. That's really just going to be due to the fact that on the non-hazardous side, they were a little bit more impacted by those Medicare increases, as Janie pointed out earlier, compared to the hazardous system, where we do see a bit of an increase in our funded ratio. And that is really coming back to the fact that they were helped more by the fact that the non-Medicare premiums did not increase year over year when we were expecting over 6% increase in those premium rates. Additionally, we did see really strong asset returns this year, and that really helped to bring those rates up or remain level, whereas we were expecting, particularly on the insurance side, we were expecting a pretty strong impact from those Medicare premiums, and we were able to soften that blow a little bit due to both the non-Medicare premiums as well as really strong asset returns for the year.
I just want to highlight that we've said it before, and I want to emphasize it again, that the financial condition of the insurance funds are going to be more volatile from year to year compared to the pension plan. With the pension plan, the benefits are known with certain. There's just less moving parts compared to the insurance. So with the insurance, you have to deal with the additional component of the actual change in medical costs from year to year, which extends beyond the subsidy that's provided. So because of that additional variability, your funded status, your contribution requirement can be more volatile as well.
And I think you all said earlier, Christy, I think it was Janie that said, is the additional money that the legislature and the governor has provided is amortized? Is it amortized over 5 years or amortized over the remaining 25 years?
Comes over 20 years. So we're actually going to see that come into play in our projections further on. But so we do have the 25 years of the original amortization base, and then each additional appropriation we get is going to be recognized over 20 years.
Thank you.
Just on, if there aren't any more questions, this is on the KRS plan. The next slide is just going to go over these same results for the state police. So on this one, we can see we did have the House Bill 259, which has increased our tier 3 normal cost rates. It is that unused sick leave time. Due to that, we're not seeing quite the same trend at this point in time on that normal cost rate. So we did see a slight increase in the normal cost rate for the state police on the pension side. Over time, that tier 3 normal cost rate is still lower than the other tier 1s and tier 2 rates. So we do expect to see this rate to go down in the future. But we're seeing a little bit of the effect of that House Bill 259 still in that rate at this moment. But overall, due to the effect on our amortization cost, we are still seeing that decrease in the total actuarial determined contribution. And that is really going to be due to the payroll increases that we've been seeing year over year. On the insurance side, really the same story Janie has already told us a couple of times here is that we were able to capture some of that good experience from the non-Medicare premiums not increasing, that we did not get as impacted by those large Medicare premium increases, and the insurance fund was able to stay in a surplus position. I think that is really all of our results for where we are today. And with that, I was going to pass it back to Janie to go over kind of where you're looking to go in the future.
So we actually go to the next slide here. What we're going to go over now is essentially a projection of your valuation results. So we take your valuation results as of today, and we're going to project those forward. An important note about these projections is that they're going to assume all of your actuarial assumptions are realized. That includes your asset returns each year. We know that there's going to be deviances, but from our assumptions in future years. So we know this isn't exactly where we know that there's going to be some changes coming into the future year. But the point of these projections is to basically a test to our funding policy. Is our funding policy achieving the goals of the board and the other stakeholders as it is now? So if we move to the next slide, we're going to start with the K non-hazardous fund. And I'm going to start on the left side here. That's your pension fund. So that blue chart here right now, so those blue lines are your unfunded liability, and that red line is your funded ratio. So we're seeing exactly what we want to see on this chart. We're seeing that unfunded liability being systematically being paid down from your contributions, and that funded ratio going up to 100% in 2049. So this is exactly what we want to see on this chart. On the bottom chart there, those are your employer contributions. The green lines there, that's your amortization cost. So that's the amount we're paying as a dollar amount. And then the black line is your normal cost rate. So kind of as we said before, you can see that normal cost rate going down steadily over time. Those are your tier 3 members coming in, the cost of benefits going down. And that amortization cost, you can see there is an initial decrease in that amortization cost. That's because of those additional appropriations that we're going to get in these next few years. And then it stays really level until it goes back up in about 20 years or so. And again, that comes back to the funding policy. And so we've had some additional appropriations in this fund, which has been really great. But keep in mind, those appropriations, those gains from those are recognized over a 20-year period. But the entire unfunded liability is being funded as a 25-year period. So that is what's causing those increases to go back up there. This is something we'll keep an eye on. Of course, before we get to that point, it's 20 years in the future. There's going to be 20 years of experience coming into this fund. So we should see a less volatility as we go on each year. But of course, this is always something we're keeping an eye on. And if that volatility remains, of course, that's conversations we're going to have with staff and of course the board. On the left side here is your insurance fund. The only thing I'll note here is we do keep the scaling the same, and that's really just to give you an idea of the scale of the pension fund versus the insurance fund. So you can see the unfunded liability associated with the insurance fund is significantly smaller, as well as the contributions. If we move on to the next slide, we're going to see the K hazardous projection, and you can see on the pension fund, very similar chart that we're seeing on K non-hazardous. Again, that unfunded liability being systematically paid down, getting to 100% funded in 2049. On the contribution chart for this fund, you can see the green lines there actually are the entire employer contribution. So that's the entire contribution as a dollar amount coming in, and then the employer contribution, that black line there is the contribution rate. So again, that initial decrease is in that black line there. That's the recognition of this year's VAL, that big increase in membership payroll that we saw, bringing the contribution as a percentage of payroll down. And again, you can see there's small decreases going in. That's the normal cost rate, and then going back up after we recognize all those gains, similar to the non-hazardous fund. On the insurance side, you can see this plan is in a pretty significant funding surplus. And based on the projections of our current assumptions, we do project it to stay in a funding surplus with no additional contributions. That being said, I'm going to preface that by saying it's not a guarantee. No additional contributions are going to be needed for this fund in the future. Like Danny said, there's a lot more variability on the insurance side of things with the Medicare costs. Those can be more variable than the pension fund. So while we're projecting this to say now, it's not a guarantee that there's no contributions in the future, but either way, it's good to see. And then finally, we'll look at the state police fund on the next slide here. Again, on the pension side, you're going to see these charts are very similar, with that unfunded liability being paid down, funded ratio going up to 100%. And you can see there's a little bit more of a steeper increase here on the contribution rate going up on your green graph here. And that's because we were recognizing that huge $250 million appropriation that we got for that fund. Similar on the insurance side, this insurance fund is also in a funding surplus, but you can see it's a lot closer to 100% funded. So there may be additional contributions coming into that fund for the future. And with that being said, if there's no additional questions from the board, I'll just wrap up real quick to my final closing comments. Again, coming to this VAL with seeing that increase in the active members, seeing that increase in membership payroll is really a good positive signal that we're seeing for this retirement system. It's a good signal for the financial well-being of the system, as well as the participating employers, which is really good for the retirement system. So that was good to see. We're seeing the increases in the funded status of these funds going up. So we're moving in the right direction, but it's always important to say it's not time to take our foot off the gas, so to speak. It's imperative that we keep getting these contributions into the system so that we can keep making progress. And with that, those are all my comments. So we'll take additional comments from the board.
Anyone have any questions? Is Christy, JD, and Danny, do you have more in the presentation, or are we ready to take a vote?
We'll just note this concludes our presentation, but in the back, following in the board package, you have the full detailed valuation reports.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Danny, can you explain to them what we give them talk to them a little bit about the sensitivity analysis, for instance. What are they looking at when they look at that? Danny, can you do that? I'm sorry.
Yes, yeah. So with the PPOB, there's a certain set of information that it's in statute on the request that the system has to provide both, it's all the systems have to provide the PPOB, and it includes sensitivity information on the investment return, the payroll growth assumption for amortizing the unfunded, and sensitivity on the inflation assumption. It's all prescribed, it's in statute, so it's just kind of automatic. I think it was probably more useful several years ago especially when the investment return was much higher, a lot more discussion on the economic assumptions. When I say years ago, I say prior to 2017. Since then, I think it's been much quieter. Other follow-up information includes the same projection information that we provided you, that we just shown you, they get as well, but they get it in more tabular or numerical values rather than on charts and graphs, although they have access to the same presentation material that you just saw.
And I will note that starts on page 212 of the board books if you wanted to see that sensitivity information.
Yeah.
Any other questions? With that, would someone make a motion to accept the 2024 actuarial valuation as presented?
I will make the motion to accept the actuarial presentation data from 2024 as presented.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. I don't think there's any further discussion. I want to thank Janie and Christy and Danny for a very clear presentation. And so with the motion and the second, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion is adopted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next thing on the agenda is a discussion from the Joint Retirement Health Plan Committee, and we have Connie on the agenda. We're going to have anybody else talk, Connie? Just you?
No, Dr. Miller should have been on there. I apologize for that, Dr. Miller.
Okay.
No need to apologize, Connie. You are the expert for sure.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Do you have
I'm
any
sorry.
comments? Dr. Miller? No comments. Okay. With that, Connie, if you
Okay.
don't mind.
Thank you all. It's informational. So we met October the 21st, the joint committee, and we reviewed the pharmacy benefits that are changing for 2025. LSA Humana did the presentation the board reviewed. And let me pull up my little, okay, here it is. I just wanted to point out that it's fairly similar, the formulary changes to last year. So if you have any questions about the statistics and number of members, Humana is available for us on the call. If you don't have any, or we can wait till the end and ask, but I was going to go on to what else Medicare Advantage pharmacogenomics product pilot. They did a little more analysis. Medicare is looking at some changes, but they haven't exactly implemented a lot yet. And so we had them check again at this point and give us final results of their pilot. They sent out the 11,115 letters with the test kits to their participants, and only about 1,043 completed, which had a result of participation of 9.4% only. And the outcome lacks statistical significance to demonstrate positive impacts in value. Therefore, Humana has no current plans to introduce a standalone program with pharmacogenomics. They do cover what Medicare covers and the provider orders for those types of genetic testings that is allowed by Medicare at this time. But I will say that, like I said, Medicare is looking at some of these things slowly, maybe implementing some changes. So we will continue to watch this and evaluate the need for any additional outside of that. And of course, anything the board wants to discuss. Open enrollment, I really don't have complete data yet. As you know, it runs through the end of November. So what we have had is a little bit better response, I think, in a more appropriate way we've had more phone calls we've been able to complete because retirees are still taking advantage of uploading and doing their documents and enrollments and compliance form 6256 verifying dependents for hazardous duty online, and it's working smoother, faster. Of course, they can see the results of the processing, what their premium is in self-service after it's processed if they submit all of these documents. And I think they're slowly accepting that. Of course, they're non-mandatory open enrollments, meaning you don't have to take action unless you wish to make a change. So we provided the webinars, the outreach, went out in the field across Kentucky. Actually, just finished all that at the end of Halloween, pretty much, actually is when all that happened. So we're now working on more of the Medicare and then, getting ID cards in December from the vendors to everyone. And that's kind of where we stand. So I will take any questions, but I don't think unless, Humana had anything to add or you had any questions, I believe that's the end of our presentation. Yes, ma'am, I see a hand up.
Connie, thank you.
Eves.
And when I read the minutes of our last meeting, which I think are accurate, but it prompted a question in my mind. You added a non-deductible, a high deductible health plan options.
Yes, that was added. The
Added,
legislators added that plan.
and you said it was not coordinated with a health savings account.
No, it doesn't have that benefit with it. It is truly a plan that's.
I understand.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Go
usually
ahead.
the coordination comes about when there's like a payroll withholding or withholding to forward to an HSA. But under the tax laws, I think an individual can have an HSA on his or her own through a bank, for example, if he or she has a high deductible health plan that meets the tax standards. So my question is, this high deductible health plan one that you cannot have an HSA because it does not meet the standards for a high deductible health plan in the tax laws?
I'm not sure about the answer to that. I can find that out for you. That plan was put in place by the legislators, and the Department of Employee Insurance follows the rules around the they call it the cafeteria plan rules with Department of Labor, Health and Human Services, those type of things. So I will ask them that question and let you know, and let the group know the answer, because I'm not sure. They only added it because it was put into law. They had no
Understand.
plans to do it, and they had actually taken it away for some of those reasons. That plan also doesn't allow access to some of the other programs that the other plans are. So we really did not, recommend that plan. We did not, the board did not feel, the committee didn't feel that was a good choice for a default plan. So they chose the basic instead. So there's not, I don't know how many people we have that would have enrolled in that plan, and I won't know that till I'll have an update for February, but I can find out that, Ms. Eves, and get that back to you
And
and
I guess
group.
as a corollary, did the communications to employees say you can't have an HSA if you plan?
We did put the things that weren't, yeah, we put the living well health clinics, and a couple of other benefits aren't allowed on that plan as well. Now, last year, DEI had a similar structure. Anybody that defaulted into that basic plan didn't get the HRA card. They did it without HRA. So this is twice they've offered that type of plan, and I will find out.
Yeah, it's the HSA.
Yeah, yeah, but they typically don't do HSAs. They would do, yeah, if they embedded it in the plan, it would have been an embedded HRA. That's all the plans contain. But the other question about the HSA, I don't know if, I'm sure they can go out on their own and obtain that, but it's not included with
I
the
understand it's
department.
not included, but
Yeah.
thank you. If you can follow up,
Okay.
just be curious because
Yes.
it's a benefit that we're not taking advantage of if in fact. Anyway, thank you for
Okay.
following.
Sure.
Yeah, I think, Mary, if I'm understanding what you're saying, is the HSA can be pre-tax dollars. And if they're able to put them in, then they can cover the expenses not covered by the high deductible.
Now the active employees
And
do that.
deductible, if it's not pre-tax, it can be deductible in other circumstances. So thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Okay,
That's all I have.
that's it, Connie?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, are there any other questions for Connie or for Dr. Miller? Okay, thank you very much. There is no action to be taken on this. And we're up to John. Would you like to give the KRS update?
Yes, thank you. Our last meeting was in October, and that dealt almost exclusively with some investment decisions. The last quarterly meeting was in September, the regularly scheduled meetings. We're going to have another meeting in December, the first week of December on the 4th, that'll deal, I think, primarily with the annual report. But since that last quarterly meeting, I've been working on a lot of things that we'll end up discussing in closed session. there are some changes in the reporting that will be submitted at a future meeting that relate to trustee education, putting everybody on the same cycle for education and that sort of thing. But that's yet to come. There has been a KPPA group that's been organized to focus on the accounts receivable from the various employers as to amounts, collectability, and all that sort of thing. So that'll be coming forward at some time in future meetings in 2025. But most of the things I've been working on are related to discussion topics for the closed session. So that's all I've got, Lynn, unless somebody has a question.
Does anyone have any questions for John? Okay, thank you, John. On new business, John, I'm going to follow up on one of your discussions, and that is the CPE requirements that we have. I'm very pleased that we found a number of people were able to look at the CPE that they are required to do for their profession. I know I'm able to put some. I don't think I'm supposed to say this word in Kentucky. ESG CPE, which counts for both my CPA and the retirement system. So I think I know some people did that. The issue of trying to get everybody on the same CPE cycle is really will help Ashley and the staff keep track of things and remind us of things that we need to do. The other is that there are two courses that we're all required to take. One is on ethics, and the other is on data security and security, an IT related one. I will say I got confused on the IT one, and the reason why is it's very short. It's not a very long course, and I thought that I was waiting to take others. So those are also things that you can do online that don't take a lot of time and are required by the legislature. So anybody that has any questions, Ashley is a great help to be able to do this. And does anybody have any questions on that? If you're hearing none, we will go into closed session. First, we'll have a motion to enter into closed session pursuant to KRS 61.810C to discuss pending litigation. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion is adopted. And
Hampton, we need a vote on.
Okay, all those in favor.
Second.
Okay, all those, I'm sorry, I was reading something ahead. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion is adopted. A motion having been made in open session to move into a closed session for a specific person, and such motion having been carried by a majority vote in public session, the committee shall now enter closed session to discuss pending litigation pursuant to KRS 61.810C. And with that, Sean, if you could